Well, hello again, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Frontline. And today we're going to be playing a little game. But before we do, I'm joined in the studio right now with Nathan Leaman, president of Frontline. Say hi, Nathan.
Hi, Nathan.
All right. And I'm also joined with Ryan Williams, who is our leadership and team development manager.
You got it. That's good.
That's these long titles we have. Ryan's no stranger to the podcast, but hasn't been on for a couple episodes. So, Ryan, why don't you fill us in on what you've been up to lately?
That's a good question. A lot been going on. Just wrapped up. Well, not wrapped up, but we shifted to a virtual series, but with a large mental health organization here, doing a leadership program throughout the organization. That's been really cool to hear kind of the stories, and that organization's really latching on to these ideas, and it's been really cool. So it's like not every, but most of the leaders within the organization. So it's been really cool. Have some travel coming up here, doing a leadership program with the organization down in Illinois. So that's exciting. And then I think probably a lot of disc workshops. So that's one of my favorite things to do. I've been doing a lot of that recently with some teams, and then designing a program for one of the larger organizations in our area, a custom program for them specifically to kind of their leadership competency. So that's been really fun to work with their team to really design that and deliver that here in the coming year. So.
Yeah, I feel like you have been so busy and gone so much that we went around the table today and I asked a question of someone left something on my desk with no context. I don't know who it was from. And then someone said that was Ryan. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, Ryan works here. Yeah. I haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah, I was trying to catch everybody, but I couldn't. So then I had to go.
Yeah. We're always doing fun things here at Frontline Training Solutions. And today we are playing a game that I like to call Myth or Fact. And Ryan and Nathan don't know what questions I'm going to ask here or statements. But the premise of the game is I'm going to make a statement about leadership. And you're either going to answer, is it a myth or is it a fact based on your opinion?
Yeah.
And we'll go from there.
Yeah, and everybody can weigh in too, as they weigh in about themselves.
Here we go. Right. So the very first one here is, I feel like I need music, like dun 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 dun. Yeah. All right, first one here is seniority or position determines leadership.
So I think I understand the statement. I would say I think that's a myth, right? So if we're saying that just because you have seniority or formal leadership responsibility, that means you're a good leader, obviously I don't think anyone probably thinks that that's true. However, the temptation might be to say, hey, I'm in the position, so that means everything I say goes. You lean into that authority to get people motivated and move forward. And there's so much more that goes into making someone an effective and good leader than simply having the title. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, obviously that's a lot of the language that's being used currently around leadership is just because you have a title or position doesn't make you a leader. I think we would also agree, and we were talking about this, it probably does mean you have a lot of opportunity for influence in your organization because of your title. It doesn't necessarily mean you're effective at influencing. We think about leadership as influence. Doesn't necessarily mean you're effective at influencing. Potentially our go-to method of influencing other people is to lean on our title, to lean on our authority given from on high, the assigned position, instead of thinking, how do I influence people by building effective relationships, thinking about compelling strategies and communication, all of those things. So I think, yes, myth, also nuance to say, well, you do have the opportunity and you do have a lot of influence with the organization because of your title. It doesn't mean you're effective at it.
Yeah. If organizations are giving you the title, they are probably hoping that you'll lead well, right? Yeah, there is kind of an assumed kind of credibility that comes with it, even if it's not automatic, which is why we focus on leadership development, to give people the tools and resources so that they can be the best they can in the role.
Great. Yeah, if you think of the webinar Jimmy and I just did, we said, bad leaders are still leaders. They're just influencing people and potentially unproductive and effective ways through yelling and screaming or manipulating or whatever it is. It doesn't mean they're not influencing. It doesn't mean they're not leading. It's just, what's the long-term impact of those types of behaviors? So
That's right. Yeah. And that webinar he referenced was Cost of Bad Leadership. It's in our archive on the website. Please check that out. It was really well done. Second one, leadership means getting others to do as you say.
that's, yeah. Okay. Myth first and foremost. I just start there. It's always nuanced, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So part of leadership is motivating and influencing for sure. But it's also like motivating and influencing people towards the right things. You know, you can be really aggressive with people and push the organization off the cliff. And, you know, you could say, well, I let them off the cliff. Well, where'd you end up? We're at the bottom of the cliff, you know? So leadership is, I think, what we would say is influencing and motivating people through your words, through your actions towards the right goals and objectives.
Yeah, I think along with that myth, if that's kind of how you're thinking as a leader, is potentially you're thinking I'm the smartest person in the room, right? I was promoted in this position because I have the right perspective, I'm the smart, I know the most, I can do the most, I'm the most capable, all of those things. So if they would just listen to me, we would be successful. So why are they pushing back? Why are they fighting on this? Why do they have ideas around this? No, they need to buy in and do my vision, my thing. I always say to leaders, like, if you turn around and there's no one behind you, are you still a leader? Well, that might come up later as we're talking about this. It's like, well, we could debate, oh yeah, you're so out far in front of them. Yeah, you're definitely a leader. They just don't get it yet. I've heard people say that, but it's like, well, it depends on how we define leadership. Is leadership, are we leading tasks or are we leading people? I think we tend to think from leading people. Like if you turn around and there's nobody behind you, are you really a leader? Maybe not. So if you're functioning in that way, do as I say kind of way, then that command and control kind of thing, then yeah, long term, that's really not leadership.
Yeah. Great response. All right. Myth or fact? We're moving on. The best leaders are skilled communicators.
Oh, wow. I like this one. I would say could be fact, and likely is fact to some degree. In other words, you know, bringing people along on the journey, right, towards whatever it is, the goal that you're trying to achieve, the objective that's important to be reached. People need to understand why it's important. They understand what it is. They need to understand why it's important. One of my favorite things to talk about in our Leading Change class is Harvard Business Review had an article that was talking about, you know, leading transformational change, and basically said, until you've talked about change 3 times more than you think you should, you haven't talked about it enough. And you step back and think, okay, what does 3 times more than you think you should really mean? Is that 3 times? Is that 50 times? Their point is you can't over communicate about the vision and where you're going and why this is important. So I do think leadership requires the ability to paint that picture, to give people that vision and set them up to buy in and believe in it. But you do that in a lot of different ways. I don't know that it's always, hey, I'm a good presenter, I speak really eloquently from the front of the room or whatever. It could be in how you message things in small team meetings or one-on-ones and through emails. But you're consistently pretty good at painting the vision. I do think that's required for a leader to be effective.
Yeah. The way, at least we talk about communication in one of the Leadership Foundations class is, you know, a lot of people go, oh, I'm a great communicator. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, I speak very eloquently. I know lots of words, you know, whatever that is, right? We think I'm a great communicator. And really the term or the way that we talk about communication is that it's a two-way street. just because you delivered a message doesn't mean it was understood in the way that you intended it to be understood. So communication is, Nick, the communication loop, or the transactional model of communication. This idea is the only way you really know if somebody understood what you were saying is if they're able to communicate it back to you with the same intent and impact that you communicated it to them. So closing that loop. And so that means you have to take people with you. And that's that idea of leadership so it is a critical component of leadership because, but it also requires listening, right? So when we say, are you a good communicator? People are thinking about the things that they say and the things that are outgoing. They're not often thinking about, am I a good listener? Like that's not the thing that pops into your head. So if you're listening to this, when you think, am I a good communicator? Well, don't just think, do I say good words? Do I say words that people can understand? And do I say it in a way they can understand? Are you also listening? And so I think that's such a critical, maybe overlooked element of communication and a critical component of being an effective leader.
Yeah, that's really great responses from both of you. Okay, moving on. Myth or fact? I like this one. One bad leader can affect the entire organization.
Fact. Huge. Big,
Tell us why.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. I think of a lot of studies, but I think anecdotally even we think of the culture. And when you think about leadership and leaders really setting the culture or how leaders show up, I always think about it as not only the behaviors that we celebrate, but also the behaviors we allow. And if you have leaders behaving in a way that's ineffective, that doesn't fall, I think, in line with your values of your organization, it really is that idea of the lowest common denominator sets the tone for an organization. That is your culture. The behaviors not only that you celebrate and you want to put up on your wall and say, hey, these are really important to us, the behaviors you allow, and especially by leaders. If it's leaders that are some of your biggest, the ones that are actually behaving in this way that are incongruent with your values as an organization, that's a big time. Now, again, bad leaders are still leaders. They're influencing people, but in ways that are potentially incongruent with your values or who you say you want to be or that you are. So I think that's a big challenge to any organization that's looking at that and going, oh, we'll tolerate that.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've said before and really have come to believe more and more is your culture is largely defined by what you're willing to put up with from individuals who are not aligned to the values, and especially if you're talking about a high performer or a leader who has a great track record. Maybe their part of the business is just killing it, doing a great job, but they're running over people every day. That says more about your culture than anything. And one of the hardest things organizations have to figure out how to do is address individuals who are really great performers, who are contributing to the bottom line significantly, but are causing all sorts of challenges in the background. And I think the measure of your culture is what you do in those times.
Yeah. And I mean, we could say it's like, well, why wouldn't we just want to allow that to happen? The actual function of a business is to make money, and they're making us money, or they're delivering this or that. I think there's the hidden costs. We talk about so many hidden costs that a lot of times we're not really looking at or evaluating, like turnover, like the long-term impact, different cultural impacts that are actually also affecting your bottom line, but we're not really measuring or evaluating those things. So if you want a compelling reason, right, just really watch about 80% of our webinars. That'll probably come up.
Yeah. Coming in 2026 webinar, The Hidden Cost of Business.
Yeah.
It's coming your way.
There you go.
I love that. Okay. Here's the next one. And I like this one because I was approached one time by a leader over me, so a leader of leaders, that I needed to know everything about everything. And so the next one, myth or fact, leaders must have all of the answers.
Well, first of all, I'm just going to say I love these because Brian and I don't know what you're about to say. So it's like, oh, okay. So you said leaders have to have all the answers. So what you said, yeah. So I think it's just wrong. So I would say a myth. It's not possible. I think leaders need to know where they can get the answers. I was in a meeting this afternoon with our owners, and we were talking about a specific client interaction, or client gig that we're working on. And I was asked a question, and there's a lot of part of me that wishes that I had the answer, right? It's like I had most of the answers for all their questions today, but I didn't have the answer for that one. And so my answer was, I know who does have the answer. I'm going to go to her and find out and get back to you. And so I think leaders have to be willing to do that as well, because you are going to face a situation where you do not have the answer. And you actually run a huge risk if you fake it, answer wrong, or put out an answer that just ends up not being true down the road. You're going to lose some credibility, if not a lot of credibility there. So
Completely agree.
being willing to say, I don't know, and hopefully you're operating in a culture where that's okay, as long as you go and get it and follow back up, right? It's not okay to say, I don't know, and then never answer the question. But you want to be functioning in a space that's realistic, and it's not realistic to know everything. And I would say the higher you go in an organization, the less likely it is that you're going to know everything. It's possible.
Completely agree.
Yeah. So you're talking about the higher you get in the organization, less answers you have. Right? It's like you're dealing with the problems that nobody else has a solution to. It's kind of, I think you've said that before, Nate, which I was like, oh, that's really interesting and helpful to think about. When you're new in leadership, this is potentially one of the biggest myths you might fall prey to, or that you might start to believe, that you have to have all the answers, and potentially leading out of this place of insecurity, and your team sees it. They're frustrated by it. You're doing a disservice to your ability to lead your team because you believe your capacity, your ability to lead is because you have all the answers. Even if you have all the answers, you're potentially doing a disservice to your team. If you are functioning as if you're the one that needs to have all the answers and give all the answers and provide all the answers, you're not really developing other people. You're not really asking good questions of them, challenging them to grow, or doing any of those things. You're just believe that your role and function is to have all the answers, and that's why you're promoted. Actually, and on the flip side, I think there's a lot of fear of like, well, I was promoted and I don't actually, there's people on my team that know a lot more about this than I do. And so I can't lead them. Actually, you can. And again, like Nate said, it's dangerous to fake it, because like, don't just be honest, be vulnerable. But it also isn't enough to go, well, I don't know the answer and I'm not going to bother trying to learn and understand. That's also potentially the go find the answer, do the accountable thing, follow up with the person who does have the answer, do your due diligence. It is possible to lead an group of experts when you aren't the expert. Your capacity as a leader is to leverage that effectively and lead the team in ways that is going to help you, and treat them like experts. It doesn't mean you can't be the leader. Also earn their respect by showing that you're doing your due diligence to learn and understand the role. So I think it's both sides, but 100% a myth that you need to be, that expertise is there's 6 sources of power, talk about this, but expertise or knowledge is one of those 6 sources of influence that we can lean into. That's the one that I think most new leaders kind of tend to lean on or believe that is where their influence needs to come from. It's just not true.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, I feel the same.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
All right, the next one here is myth or fact. Leaders must be extroverts or dominant.
Right, Nate?
Why you say that?
A resident introvert.
Yeah. So clearly that's not true.
Myth. Yes.
I do think there is a perception out there that leaders need to be very extroverted. What was the second word? Dominant. Yeah. Yeah. So, old school leadership, maybe there's a lot of things hanging on in people's minds about that. But I would just say leaders come in all shapes and sizes. There are things that you as a leader are going to need to be able to do. So you are going to have to rally the team. You are going to have to communicate effectively. You are going to have to do things outside of your preference from time to time. And that means a whole lot of things, not just extroversion, introversion, or dominance or submissive. There's a lot of things that you have to do outside of maybe your natural style. But we would be in a world of hurt if we said that only people who have that style can lead. Because it's not going to be the right connection for some, and it's not practical. We know, 50% of the population, essentially 50% is introverted, 50% are extroverted, if we want to just use those categories. And so are we really going to eliminate 50% of the population from consideration? No. So I think it takes all shapes and sizes. The personal story on this one, I had my own personal bias towards this when I first started getting into leadership development. I felt like I should be extroverted. And even so much that when I took the Myers-Briggs for the first time, I came back as extroverted. I did it as part of a certification process. And then when I learned what it was about and talking to the facilitator, she's like, "You're not an extrovert. Why'd you come out that way?" And it was really because I had a bias towards, leaders are extroverted, leaders are outgoing, leaders are this, that, or the other thing. And so that bias crept into how I responded to things. Then once I understood it's actually okay. It's okay to be an introvert. You know it's okay to be an introvert, Ryan? It's okay.
So.
Yeah. So to me, it's like, now let's be realistic with the fact that leaders come in all shapes and sizes.
That's right.
So I would add, leaders also must be introverted, and the opposite of dominant is supportive. They need to be both at the right times. And for some of us, that's going to be really natural. We're going to have no problem directing and dominating conversation and saying what needs to be said, right? Dominance kind of a strong word, but let's say really direct and, pull no punches, like this needs to be said. And so I'm going to say it. As leaders, I think we all need to be that way at the right times. But also as leaders, we need to be open and listen and patient and deferential to others' opinions and points of view, and pull some punches and be empathetic to where people are at. You need both. The thing is you're like Nick said, you're biased towards one of those over the other. And so, yes, it is a myth that you always have to be that way, but sometimes you will need to be that way, regardless of your preference. Yeah. And so I think that's an interesting way to think about it. If you're thinking about, well, my preference is towards this or that, it's a myth. We can talk to a lot of organizations. A lot of their leaders are the direct, dominant, extroverted style because the culture of the organization is biased towards that. There's this underlying belief. And I wouldn't say that organization is better for it, though. One organization recently, they kind of triaged everything because it was like a little bit of, if you know what I mean by triage, it means we just put a Band-Aid on it because we just wanted to move forward with progress. And they didn't have that more introverted, cautious, analytical person going, time out, wait a second. Like we keep like putting Band-Aids on this stuff, but do you guys know how much this is costing us? Do you know how much it's costing us? Like, well, we're just charging ahead, right? That extroverted dominant style, and without stopping and analyzing and really thinking about, okay, but how much is this charging ahead without being analytical about it costing us? And so their culture was going that way because they were biased towards that. There was a belief that this is how leaders are, or this is how organizations and decision makers are, and they weren't better for it. I'll say that much. They had people on the team that weren't so much that way. The decision makers, the people in the room weren't really listening to them because they were biased towards that behavior, that style.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting way to think about it. Those that are listening, you might be thinking about your team and going, "Oh, there's not one way."
Yeah. Fantastic responses. Is this fine?
We are
fine.
It's totally interesting.
If you're following along still, I hope you're getting them all right. If not, give us a call.
Yeah.
All right. Next one here is leadership equals management.
I'm waiting for you on this one.
So no, I would say that's
Yeah.
false.
Myth.
I think effective managers do lead and have to lead well. Most leaders are going to have to manage something well. So I think they're kind of like picture a Venn diagram of leadership and management. I think there's some overlap. I think they are distinct things, and relate to, I think process and following, approved procedures and making sure that everybody's, treated consistently, and performance process, hiring, whatever. Like those are processes, tools, and systems that need to be managed and managed well. I think managing it well requires some effective leadership, but it's not 100% laid over, I wouldn't say.
Yeah. On the flip side, is it possible to be a leader without any management responsibilities? That's sometimes how I think about it. I think we think of formal leadership roles, and informal might be another way to think about it. If you're a formal leader, you probably have some management responsibilities. Sometimes I think about it as leadership is how you think about management. And I don't know if that might be a flawed idea, but it's like my job. Yes, I have to manage these structured systems, but as a leader, how do I think about developing people and delegating effectively? That's management, but delegating the way that people get opportunities to grow, and they get to do the things they're passionate about and enjoy, and all those different things that create higher levels of engagement. So that's still a management task, delegating tasks. But if I'm thinking about the strengths of my people and things they enjoy, and how I might need to develop them some to get to the place where they can deliver on those things, I think that's more of a leader's mindset. So I don't necessarily think about them in two separate camps, especially when we're talking to leaders within organizations or people with formal roles, which is a lot of the work that we're doing. We kind of talk about them in I think the Venn diagram of the overlapping elements. Some people like to separate out the two. I think I'd again add it's possible to lead and influence without a formal management role or position. So you are still a leader in your own right. You can influence and win people towards a direction. So I think it is an interesting conversation. I think that'd be an interesting podcast around the difference between management and leadership and how to think about it.
Well, I think a good example too is, the project Ryan was mentioning earlier, the local organization. We started out by helping them put together really a management immersion program where they wanted to make sure that all the managers were following the same tools and resources and processes for hiring and onboarding and setting goals and all of that. And they knew where to get the resources when they needed to do those things. Where are the tools that help me do these processes? Managers are asked, people with formal leadership responsibility are asked to do a lot of process stuff. And so they just wanted to level set, make sure everybody's on the same page. And also, frankly, just basically say, hey, as someone who leads other people, you've got additional responsibilities you need to be aware of. So you need to understand a little bit about employment law. You need to really understand a little bit about how decisions can influence people and your role in creating a safe work environment. So they did that first. And then they said, okay, now we want to focus on building up leadership capability. So this is now about how I'm influencing others and coaching people and giving feedback and all of those things. So even organizations sometimes compartmentalize these things and say, hey, let's just make sure that you know how to do the job of a manager. And then the leadership stuff is going to help you think differently about your role and how you influence and win people towards the goal. So it's an idea.
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, really great. Thank you both. All right. Myth or fact?
What number are we on?
We are on number 8.
Oh, wow.
And so far, you guys are 7 for 7.
Oh, okay. You got the answer.
I got the answer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Number 8, myth or fact? Ineffective leadership is a major cause of turnover.
Fact. 100%. I think every organization rises and falls on leadership. I think shout out to John Maxwell if he hasn't been quoted in a while, bringing him back. But 100%. I think when I'm working with groups and we do these case studies that are a lot of times based on real situations, real scenarios that we draw from, usually the aha moment is when they go, wow, pretty much the root cause is we have an ineffective leader. I was just doing that yesterday. Whereas like there's all these different issues, like the team's not effectively, the things aren't being communicated, you know, we're in all this turmoil and people are thinking about leaving and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, well, we could talk about all these different issues, but really if we start to draw the line back to what's causing all of these different issues, well, the leaders just, one, doesn't understand that that's their role and function, like that they need to be like helping the team work through these things towards a more cohesive thing. They don't, the leaders like thinks, oh, I'm just here to say, hey, these are your tasks, go do them. And that was pretty much how they were functioning. And they didn't understand why people weren't just on board with these. And funny, this is going back to a lot of the myths we've been talking about. It's like, I don't get it. You know, I'm giving you these different tasks. This is how it needs to be. This is the vision. Go do them. I don't understand. Do people not want to work anymore? And they were all like, well, I don't think that's the real issue here. Okay, what's the real issue? The leader's mindset around these things is not right. And so you have individuals there thinking, why am I even here? It's just like, if he's just it's just gonna be him, his way or the highway. And if it's, you know, it's just him dictating down. He hired me as an expert in this area, but not really listening to any of my input and so on and so forth. And so, yeah, a lot of times those case studies, their kind of aha moment is, wow, this pretty much stems from the mindset and the behaviors of the leader.
One of the favorite things for leadership development people to say is that people don't quit their jobs. They quit their managers. It's a great anecdote that's out there, but it's proven out in a lot of research, you know, so organizations have studied this. It's not the only reason people leave, but I think what you said is a major contributor, and absolutely it's a major contributor. I remember, you know, being in a number of different HR roles. People would come to me and they'd be like, okay, we've got this employee, whatever, they're not performing. We need to get rid of them. My first question back to them was always, what have you been doing to manage this situation up to this point? 9 times out of 10, nothing. 9 times out of 10. So you haven't been providing feedback. You haven't been documenting this in your one-on-ones. Why is this the first time I'm hearing about it? Because, you know, when you do terminations in most organizations, you got to have HR's help with that. So you're bringing me in and it's already a complete dumpster fire, right? Why didn't we talk about this 6 months ago or 4 months ago or whatever? And so think about the wasted time. And that is actually a reflection on the manager or leader as much as it is on the individual. Like, that's a big problem and could be part of the reason the person's disengaged, not performing, unproductive. Maybe they're not clear on what the standards are and all that stuff. And it just leaves this person out to dry. So I'm always interested, you know, when there's a significant performance issue or people are like, oh, we got to get rid of somebody. Let's talk about why first and what have you been doing up to this point. And people just, I think more and more people are going to be less tolerant of working under a leader that is just very poor. And they're going to have options. They're going to go somewhere else. You know, so that's going to be more and more of a challenge as time goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. Even from my perspective, I mean, the last 2 jobs I left before coming here were because of a bad leader. Yeah. And it got to the point where it's like, is it really worth staying here anymore?
Right.
So I really love the job, really love the community, but
that's the question people ask.
Kind of miserable. Yeah. Really great responses. Thanks so much. If you're ever curious listening to this about what, you know, the cost of turnover might be in your organization, we have a free tool we can send you. Just reach out to us. We'd love to connect you with that. All right, next one. Leadership is not about the bottom line. Myth or fact?
Leadership is not about the bottom line. So I'm going to say false.
Agreed. Myth.
And because I'm going to say it's a myth.
Okay.
Because I would say that leadership, if you would say leadership is not only about the bottom line, then I would say fact. But in this case, I think the results of the organization, achieving the goals of the organization, whatever that is, you're a nonprofit, you're a for-profit, whatever, manufacturing organization, service organization, you have goals, whatever that bottom line is for you. And achieving them is a primary responsibility of leaders. It should be what your goals are focused on. You should have a direct line of sight between what it is that you're being asked to do and lead your team to do and the organization's overall success. And so in that sense, I would say, yes, your role is about the overall success of the organization. You should never lose sight of that. It's not only that, it's primarily, a lot of it is that, but you're also creating a culture. You're also creating a place where people want to come and stay. You're also helping people through challenging situations and difficult discussions, and you carry a lot of weight. Leadership is a lonely, hard place to be, and you have a lot of responsibility, and part of it is making sure the organization achieves success. So I might have gotten that one wrong, but Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm curious what answer you have there, but just based on your facial expressions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a really interesting question. The more I sat and thought and listened to Nate talk about it, it is interesting to think about. I'm thinking about Barry Waymiller, where they at times sacrificed the bottom line for the good of the people, because they decided their goal. Well, I guess the bottom line was the bottom line. I mean, they had to stay in business, right? And so if you're not familiar with the story, essentially during, was it 2008 financial crisis, they were looking at layoffs. They decided instead of laying people off, some people would take unpaid vacation. And so that way they could basically keep everything afloat without firing anybody, without laying anybody off, which is a pretty inspired idea. And maybe some think, oh, that's very much ideal, and not everybody has the opportunity to do that. Sure, there's lots of potential criticism there, but I think what's interesting about that is you ask yourself, okay, what really matters to us as leaders? Is it the people? Is it the bottom line? Do we have to sacrifice the bottom line at time for the good of the people? All of that. But I think if you ask how Barry Waymiller is doing today, quite good, and the long-term implications, not just the short-term gain, but the long-term implications of an organization that's willing to do that, creates this incredible commitment from the people that work there. And I think Simon Sinek tells this story, so that's what I'm thinking about. He writes the book "Leaders Eat Last," right? And so it is a really interesting question to go, well, what do leaders do? Well, ultimately, I think leaders achieve the goal, but they also don't sacrifice their core values in the process. And so that's an interesting one that I feel like could be debated, to go, well, what's the ultimate goal? But also, what are your values? Are you willing to sacrifice the bottom line because you say that your family is one of your core values? Are you willing to, do these other things? When you ask the question, what's the purpose of a business? Because I think achieving the bottom line, quote unquote, to sacrifice our soul in the process, or however you want to, whatever dramatic term you want to use there, is an interesting conversation to have as an organization. And as you're thinking about leading an organization, you have to ask yourself what really matters at the end of the day. So all of that being said, I think if you lead and we could talk about leading the business versus leading people, because those are two sometimes different conversations, but they coincide with each other. Being a strategic leader, understanding business trends and how to make good decisions around all of that stuff. And then you talk about leading people, how to win and influence people, and a goal and whatever. So sometimes I think about those two as two, not always conflicting, but two different ideas that you have to figure out how to live in between those two worlds. So I guess the jury's now out for me on the answer to
Either
that.
way, right? I think it's what's interesting to me is that Ryan was talking, makes me think about what's a leader's bottom line. There's the organization's bottom line, whatever goals you need to achieve. What's your bottom line as a leader? What's most important to you? It goes back to what's your leadership philosophy. What are your personal values? How does that show up when you do your job? So I think it's important for leaders to understand that, because there's going to be a day where you're asked to potentially choose between the two. And then how do you navigate that situation? Or you're going to feel that pressure, especially maybe the higher you go in an organization, or even frontline leaders. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
That is. And I mean, I think about our own leaders here, our owners, and in times where I do know they've like sacrificed, their own bottom line as far as how much money they potentially made at the end of the year or whatever, for the people that work here.
Right.
And that's like, whoa. I mean, that's pretty incredible. And I think there's a lot of leaders like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously talking about, higher level leaders, let's say you're a mid-level or frontline leader or manager within an organization. I think if you do, at the end of the day, if you do the right things, you're effectively going to meet your goals. It's going to have a positive impact on the bottom line.
Yeah.
So yes. And
it was a trick question. I gave you guys on purpose. It originally was, leadership is not only about the bottom line.
Oh, okay.
As in when you said that, I started to smirk.
Well, that's read my notes.
I said only out.
Yeah.
I want to see what you guys said. Very good. We're going to keep it going. Myth or fact? And this is number 10.
Number 10. We're
Myth or fact?
Yeah.
Great leaders are always in the spotlight.
I mean, always is quite the word there.
always, never, you're gonna get
so. I'm gonna say myth. I think you can have really great leaders that don't take up the spotlight, and you can also have people in the spotlight who you should never follow as a leader.
Yeah.
So
true.
So I think that's a really, to me, that's maybe one of the easier ones to answer, just because you start to think about what the opposite would be. And
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So if we go back to the idea of what it means to be leaders, like your capacity, your ability to influence people towards a goal, is, I guess, a very short, limited definition of leadership. But being in the spotlight is a part of that. I go back to, and people probably get sick of me talking about this on some level, but the balcony and the dance floor. I think from the spotlight, you have a certain perspective and ability to influence in that way, but you potentially are missing some things if you don't step out of the spotlight, and connect in a different way. I think, I guess maybe I'm interpreting that in a certain way, but I think as a leader, you also need to be prepared and know that you're going to be in the spotlight. Maybe not metaphorically, people are watching you and seeing how you function and behave if you're in a function or position formally or sometimes informally. Metaphorically, you're in a spotlight because people are watching you. So I think it's different ways to interpret that. So to Nate's point, no, you don't have to be that person that's in the spotlight, that's that charismatic, give me the spotlight type person. So yeah, so I would say, if we're going to put always on it, the answer is no. If we're looking at it as like a concept of you're in the spotlight, people are watching you.
Yeah,
true.
That's true.
Yeah. It's because of the balcony and the dance floor that I wrote this question.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. It is a blog article. I'll link it in the caption. Okay. bonus question.
I thought we were done.
Yeah.
There is no tiebreaker. You guys have answered.
Oh, you've
10 for 10.
Okay, correctly.
okay, good.
So, last one here is only inexperienced leaders need a coach or training.
Oh gosh, false.
I mean, we might be slightly biased as
Yeah.
and this.
Well, Ryan alluded to it earlier, and it's something I say a lot of times, is that the higher you go in an organization, all the easy questions have been answered. And the more you rely on your intuition, your experience to make decisions, because there's not a roadmap, there's no playbook. And when you're in that environment, the importance of having resources that you can lean on, tools, because there's a lot of great tools out there. We're going to be launching a new program here, really targeting leader of leaders, called Lead the Next Level. And we're going to be introducing very experienced, very strong leaders to some new resources and tools that maybe they haven't been aware of in the past. It's going to enhance their effectiveness as leaders. We're going to include coaching in that as well. Coaching is the most customized training and development experience you can have, because one-on-one, and it's all about your own issues, challenges, needs. And that's going to give people an opportunity to really wrestle with the things that are holding them back. And I would say also, kind of adding a little flavor to this as well, the higher you go up in the organization, the less likely you are to get honest, candid feedback from people.
It's true.
Because they're afraid of you. They're not
They don't want to lose their job.
Yeah. Or they have a tremendous amount of respect for you or whatever. They're just not going to tell you the stuff you need to fix. And so you can have really easily come to the conclusion that I'm good. I don't have anything to work on. Those who know you best know that you do. And the fact of the matter is, leadership is a lifelong journey that never stops. You never stop growing. So if you're putting yourself in a position where you're growing and their answers are not there for you, you're having to make up the answers as you go, you're surrounded by people who are not giving you candid and open, honest feedback, I would argue the people who need leadership development the most are the people at the highest levels. Now, they all need it. We all need it. But there's a sense in which you actually really need to lean into that support. Most don't, because they feel like I've achieved what I've achieved and I'm at the level I'm at. And boy, just think about how much better you could be if you actually just invested in your growth.
That's so true, Nathan.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, and I'll just very short add, what kind of experience? Because, okay, people are probably sick of me talking about this. I'm playing golf as of recently. I've never been a golf player. I played, dabbled. But I've learned that practice doesn't necessarily make me better. As much as I go to the driving range, I still suck at golf. And I really need a coach to help me.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how to fix
You don't know
what I'm doing wrong. I don't know exactly what I'm doing wrong. I need
you just keep
someone
doing
to
it.
tell me. Yeah. I have lots of experience playing golf now. Like I've kind of like made up for lost time. And I've been like kind of going crazy playing, wanting like as much as the weather's nice right now. I have lots of experience at playing golf, but I still suck at golf. And so it's like, that might be you as a leader.
Yeah.
You might have lots
Really good analogy.
experience, but practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. I forget who said that, but I'm learning that's so true with golf, but it's also really true with leadership. You might believe like what has got you there is because you're really successful. It might just because you know a lot about the job and you're an expert in there. It doesn't mean that you're a good leader. And you might be running around like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to like fix everything because you believe your job is to get the job done and not to develop or lead people. And you don't really know how, or you don't even necessarily understand that that's the mindset you should be having. And so I go back to that golf analogy. It's like, man, I could just keep driving myself crazy and still have a messed up golf swing because I have nobody there really helping me. So even if you are an experienced leader, it doesn't mean you know what you need to know and that you're fixing what you need to fix. And potentially, like Nate said, doesn't mean somebody's going to tell you either, because most people don't give feedback to their bosses, even when we ask.
Yeah, that's great. See this, everyone? They didn't know that. They didn't know the questions before. This is the kind of thought leadership we have working here at Frontline Training Solutions.
It was sweating bullets here.
Yeah, you guys is great. Here at Frontline Training Solutions, we develop people, we inspire growth, and we unlock potential. We want to help transform your organization with the best coaching and leadership development and consulting and all of the different solutions that we have to offer. We have a free webinars, we have this podcast, we've got blogs, we've got everything that you can think of to make you and your team and your leadership better. So thanks so much, Nathan.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Hope you guys enjoyed Myth or Fact here at Frontline Training Solutions. This is Behind the Frontline. See you next time.